Hello, everyone, and welcome to Creativity Worth Expressing. I'm your host, Ryan Anthony Hernandez, and today I'm with special guest Edward Martin III. Edward, how are you doing today?
I am doing great, Ryan. Thank you so much for having me.
And to get us started, can you share with us what is your form of creativity?
Well, a couple different things. So I'm a writer. I have two novels published. I'm working on a third. I'm also working on a book series that's separate from that. I am a screenwriter. I've written a number of a couple features and some shorts. And I'm a filmmaker. I've made four feature films, a bunch of shorts, seven different web series, and help teach filmmaking. Have been doing that for close to 20 years. Um, Little essays and weird, it's just so weird. Poetry. Where did that come from? I don't know. Um, but yeah, probably the biggest one. That was the first one I mentioned was the writing. Just tons and tons and tons of writing.
So for you, was there a moment that sparked your love for, uh, well, you have a bunch of forms of creativity. So what sparked your love for creativity in the first place?
Well, the first was writing, and I didn't. Um, I, I I think I started very, very young. I read what would probably be considered sort of young adult detective stuff. Think like The Big Brain or Encyclopedia Brown, stuff like that. Like, most people would think like that's little kid stuff. Yes, but I loved it. And then I started finding adult detective stuff. And it didn't even occur to me that there was fiction. Wasn't this weird? Because I had occasionally watched stuff on TV, Space 1999 or Star Trek or whatever. But somehow it didn't occur to me that people generated fiction. It's, I mean, in retrospect, it's absolutely ridiculous. But um, I decided even then, like, I want to be a detective. So this is all good for me. And occasionally I would read things like cryptozoology stuff, Bigfoot stuff and pyramid power and all that kind of stuff too, because that was about the time of year where everybody was reading that. And I just took it as like, well, that's real. Okay. Um, I had this sobering moment in a grocery store line when I pointed that to the cover of a National Enquirer,
Yeah.
and like, look at this. This is back when they were less gossip and more just like weirdo stuff.
Yeah.
And my mother told me, like, no, no, hon, just because it's printed doesn't mean it's true. And it just blew my mind. And about then, I picked up a science fiction book. I judged it by its cover, but
Mhm.
that's okay because I enjoyed the book. It was one of the Robert Heinlein young adult books. And then, so the weird thing that clicked over, my father's driving me around. We're in the car, and the news is on. And there was, and he, my grandmother, his mother, lived in Burbank, so we were visiting her. And so there's this big news article about the show Sigmund and the Sea Monster, which I watched because I was a kid, and Sid and Marty Krofft were like awesome, still are awesome, but um, and it was a news article or news story about how the theater, not theater, the studio where they make Sigmund the Sea Monster had a fire, and a lot of the props were destroyed in the fire, and they're not sure if they could continue making the show. And my little brain, I was maybe eight, well, maybe 10, give or take a bit. And that was where the pop was like, people do this. Well, a fire set, I understand news. People, someone set a fire, it was horrible and bad, but that means that Sigmund and Sea Monster isn't going to happen anymore. Oh my gosh! And that connection was made. Like, people make movies, people make TV shows, and like my whole brain just cascaded and like, people write books, people do this stuff. Wow! So very shortly after that, I decided to try writing because that's most of what I was encountering. Um, and I fiddled and faddled, um, wrote some stuff, had a few little things published. But it wasn't until I kind of set myself an odd little goal. Sorry, two goals. One, I ran across this competition to write 55 word stories, and each story had to have a named protagonist. It had to have a conflict and it had to have a resolution and an identified setting of some sort. It doesn't mean you have to go into the details of it. I mean, you only got 55 words. And I struggled and struggled to write one, and then I thought, oh, I think I can write maybe two, possibly three, and then something just kind of clicked, and I understood formula a little bit. And formula sounds bad, but it's not. It was more like I like the big pieces kind of moving around, right? And all of a sudden, I understood how they connected to each other, and I think I ended up in like the next 2 days writing something like 150 of these little stories. I sent them all into this competition, by the way. I think it was rigged. Like none of them won. None of them. I didn't even get a note saying, "Who are you?" and please stop writing us. Which honestly, I kind of expected after a while. But that was when I sort of understood. There's it's not just mechanical, but there's understanding how pieces come together. And then a few years after that, I kind of committed to myself. I'm going to write a new story, and I'd written like a few stories, and I've enjoyed them. But like, you know what? This is the same mechanism. You just have to understand how to tell stories. Not how to say how to tell stories, but like how to put these pieces together. And then they can be different forms and different shapes. You're looking at the underlying thing. What is the story trying to do? And then you shape the surface, right? It's all underneath, and you shape the surface. And so the story was, the goal was, I'm going to write a story every week for a year. So I know, yeah, sure, some of them would be garbage. I'm not going to worry about it because I'm gonna keep myself on that that rhythm, get that rhythm. And so I did. I actually completed 55 stories. And when I was done, and I'm looking through all these stories, and I realized how some of them felt like it transformed me, taking that taking that process and kind of separating it into these pieces. Um, Suddenly, like it was weird. It allowed me to sort of accept I can create just what I want. It doesn't have to be a particular thing or a particular precious thing. I don't have to worry about it being, portentous or ominous or inspirational. It's like I just feel this way. I feel and in fiction allows you to explore what ifs. I mean, that's its whole reason, right? That's the only reason we've ever told stories that are what if stories. From those moments we're sitting around a campfire and we're talking about, well, what if the darkness actually held something really scary? This is why I'm going to tell you the story so you don't go into darkness, because actually the darkness holds a lion. But you think you're like, oh, I can handle a lion. Well, what if it's some supernatural lion? So this is why we tell these stories. We tell them as warnings, as models, as explorations of our own hearts. And I could tell from the first story to the last story, wow, I didn't even realize how much I've been changing doing this and how this sort of comfort came in. So there's a comfort in writing that I had to um, create by, I don't want to say forcing myself, but bringing myself to a place where I stopped worrying about mechanics and just focused on just create. Don't worry about it. Is it 400 word story? I don't care. I don't care. Is it a 7,000 word story? I don't care. Just write it and not worry about that. With film, I had this sort of sense that it was kind of abstracted. Like a little bit like when I was talking with Sigmund and the Sea Monster. Like, yeah, I understand conceptually that people are involved, but movies are huge, big, giant things with huge, giant budgets. So, and it's okay to laugh. So I was pulling all kinds of random stuff off of video rental shelves. And I ran across this video called More on Movies. This is ridiculous. This is very, very silly. It's this guy, and he just made the most ridiculous little movies. And they were all little short things. And some of them, if you can imagine, that they're just so ridiculous. Like he'll sit there and he'll put his face into the camera and hold up a dead chicken, like a chicken you get at the store. And he'll say something like, chicken on a trampoline, and then cut to a trampoline And then he comes in frame and throws the chicken against his trampoline, and the chicken bounces out, and it's weirdly hilarious. And I'm watching this, and I'm kind of laughing, like, "Oh my God, this is ridiculous and silly and fun," and and all of a sudden, the whole bank of lights, different lights came on, and I can do this. This is not a $100 million movie project. This is a guy who's deciding he wants to have this kind of fun, and so we did, probably shot on 8 millimeter. I don't even remember. I'm sure that someone who listened to this, like, wait a minute, I've heard of this, and they're looking it up already. Like, no, no, and they have the whole Wikipedia article on it. It's great. Um, but suddenly, this idea that you can, if you want to visualize your story, if you want to do something visually, that technology is within your grasp. I borrowed a VHS camera and I made a couple of short films, and I had a great time at it. And I submitted a couple of them to some film festivals, and they liked them. And it's like, oh, okay, so we can do that. Um, there's definitely a scale, right? And there's a scope of your story and a scale of your ability to do things, and there's skills, and that's all things that you got to learn. But you also can find people that can help you learn these things, because one thing that I think a lot about, and you and I had talked a little earlier about sort of what is our purpose? Why do we exist? And I know this is a little on the philosophical side, but I strongly feel that one of the reasons we exist is to connect with other people. And we do that with whatever method makes sense to us, whether it's writing stories and sharing stories, or whether that's making movies, or whether it's just hanging out and watching football, or whatever we do, we connect, always trying to connect. And that feels to me like that's why I'm here. That's why any of us are here, but I can't babysit everybody else. I can focus on me. Why I'm here is to connect with people, share stuff. And the way I share that is through writing and um, filmmaking. And then poetry started because I overheard someone lecturing on haiku. And when I was in grade school, as so many of us, we learned about haiku being syllable count,
Yeah.
more than 575 or 757. Oh, I can't remember. This is why I look it up, but I think it's 575. But this person wasn't lecturing on that. This person and they weren't really lecturing. They were sort of talking about how haiku is, yes, there's this format, but the syllable count is not the issue. The point was to make an emotional connection with somebody, and by sharing an experience in that haiku. And I'm listening to this, and my mind is just being blown, because, like, I know this. Wait, I know this. We're connecting with people, and in a haiku, we connect with an emotive content, and it's usually using a natural thing as an allegory, whether it's water flow or the sun rising or the sun setting or snow on a mountaintop. There's a natural metaphor for a shared connection and that's part of the energy of the haiku. And my mind is just, oh gosh, yes, 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 yes. I understand now. I know this, it's not a complete understanding, but to really kind of grasp that sense of, like, oh yeah, poetry is also connecting. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. I had a chance, and then I was working for a while with a fella, and we were working in a library, and he was a poet, and I'd never met, like, a live poet, but he was really good. His name was John. I can't remember his last name. I probably could look it up. Um, but he was an award-winning poet, and we would often talk storytelling while we were working, and images from his poetry still come to mind. And that totally cemented the idea for me. Like, we're connecting. He connected to me. He reached out with a poem. People have reached out with movies. Think about movies, whether they're short or long, that have stuck with you. And not necessarily things like, because like a lot of stuff I do is horror, But there's one aspect like, oh yeah, one dude got his face torn off, and I really remembered that. Or well, yeah, I'm driving behind a logging truck, and I stopped driving behind a logging truck. But there's also like emotional connections and feelings and senses. The cabin in the woods was something I was thinking about least recently, and about how there's that end that almost seems crazy to us in some ways, where the characters are like they're essentially agreeing whatever has gone on before has been too problematic. So we're just going to let things change. And everyone else was, no, no, we can't let it change. We can't let it change. We can't let it change. It's like, that's no longer your call.
Mhm.
You've created an untenable situation. And of all the things, when you think about it, like in a movie, the person who releases all the bad guys, who like lets all the crazy things and the monsters out, they're the bad guy, right? And then by the time you're at this end of this movie, you're like, yeah, actually, I kind of see that. Yeah, yeah. And you remember that. You're they've connected with you, even in a big film like that, where there's lots of fingers in the pot, lots of people working on the movie, and everybody kind of contributes their own aspect to it. You still get that connection from somewhere. Um, and I see that, um, and I see that with writing too. I think about the things that I've read sometimes, and with like novels and whatnot. Um, the author's a little closer to the work because it isn't going through a producer and a set designer and a whole bunch of other creative aspects before it finally shows up on a screen that you're hoping that they project it right. But the book that's in your hand has not gone through quite as many modifications. So it's in a way a little more connected to the author. And so it's going to be a little more, you're connecting with the more sincere them. And still you get these connections, and it always just always feels like connecting. And so that's the sort of the three basics of like at what were those catalytic moments where um it changed to me from being an abstract thing that didn't really exist to suddenly like we can do this, like we as people, but me also, like I can do this. I can write a book, I can write a story, I can write a poem, I can make a movie. These are things that are doable. And yeah, there's technical stuff and there's aspects and there's mechanical aspects, but a lot of this stuff is even at its simplest. I mean, look what we got now. Like you got a phone, right? And
Yeah.
almost all of our phones now are able to film. You can shoot 4K video and get yourself a $10 microphone that you can, a lavalier that you can hook up. Um, so even filmmaking has become in some ways, this is very easier to do.
Yeah.
And then a person who might have been an amazing artist with a ton of vision and ability, but just unable to get themselves film camera and a film crew, in the 70s, suddenly now they can do all that.
Yeah.
And so you're hearing voices we've never heard before. You're seeing imagery we've never seen before. And it's so amazing. Okay. So when I was in college, um, I met a guy, and I'm going to remember his name later. I feel awful now. I can't remember it. But he did a column. I love this column. It's called Weird Washington. And he would interview people who had supernatural stories. So they were maybe visited by UFOs, or they were visited by, lizard people, or had Sasquatch encounters, or some other supernatural thing. They met fairies in the woods or whatever. And he would interview them. And then he would write a little column about it. And he took them seriously. And so we were talking about it one day, and I will admit, I was feeling a little negative that day. I've tried to fix that since, but every once in a while, it can happen. I was feeling a little negative, like, oh my gosh, these people, what are they, just nuts? And it's Chris Bader. Chris Bader was the guy, and Chris kind of looked at me like, well, Edward, I try not to, and I'm paraphrasing him. It's been a long time. Um, but I'll try to do him right. So he's like, it's not whether or not I believe them that matters. They just want to be heard. And so many people dismiss them out of hand, and they're not being heard. and they get more frustrated and they get upset and they don't know how to respond and they feel like they've got something they need to talk about. And all I do, I listen to them and I write this stuff down and then I share it, and it's just that's they just want to be heard. And I realize it's the same thing. We just want to connect. And we connect to our stories. And whether our stories were, I saw a Bigfoot when I was hunting, or our stories were, I saw something weird when I was looking at the moon through my telescope the other day, or just anything. We are all just trying to connect. So Chris kind of realigned me in that place, which is good because I was just about that time, I was like kind of getting a little more cynical. Um, and he kind of guided me back in a super gentle way. Like, no, they just want to be heard. Like, oh God, yes, you're right, you're right. How did I forget this? Um, so to this day, I'm always going to be fond of hearing stories about that. Um, Telling stories about weird stuff that happened, listening to stories about weird stuff that happened, and just sort of acknowledging we have an entire planet full of people who want to connect, and they do that by often telling stories.
What is the name of the book of your books that you have out so far?
The first book, it was under two different titles. One was called Through the Night, and then it was republished under the title The Blood Red Night of Hatchet Valley. The second novel is called The Violet Furnace, and that came out, I think, just under a year ago, a bit or so. I think last summer. Um, don't have a title yet for the third one.
Okay, so you're working on that, but do you have any poetry that is up to be published?
I have an entire book because I never do things in small bites. Oh my God. So Ryan, I got this wild hair to write poetry from the perspective of an artificial life form of some kind, an android or whatever, an AI or an android. And that is by the way, a technical interest of mine, artificial generalized intelligence, and I'm intrigued by that. I'm not super interested in what's being called AI now, which is just sort of the regenerative writing and regenerative art. Um, but like no, like the actual stuff that scientists have been studying and it's really high level, weird, out there stuff since like the 70s or even early, well, 60s and 70s. Um, so from that perspective, and big Star Trek fan, by the way. No surprise, right?
Yeah.
But so I wrote a poem, just like what would an android writing to an organic that they were in love with and or obsessed by, and like people stumble the first times that they try to connect to other people too in a romantic fashion, and they sometimes they make mistakes or they're like, man, I really wish you had not thought to say it that way. Just any number of ways, right? Where our lives are full of moments where we've like, I didn't say that right. Oh my God. So I wrote a couple of poems and I thought, well, this is really kind of cool. It's from the perspective of this robot or android or AI, and it can vary. And like, oh, I'll write a couple more. Well, I really like this. And I'm sort of like kind of keeping a file and adding a new poem to it whenever I thought of it. And all the some technical things that I remember from various day job type stuff and technical background. Like, oh yeah, that'd be an interesting, yeah, hands could come disconnected. That would work all right. Um, I mean, that would really mess things up too, but that's okay. Um, and the next thing you know, I sort of looked at the whole collection, like, oh my God, I have like 120 poems. So I bound it up in a book, and of course, I had to write a meta story around it. So the whole idea was that all these poems were found engraved on a manufactured diamond that had been moved around since it was found in the mid 70s, before diamonds could be manufactured. I mean, it's this weird kind of sci-fi explanation for like where these poems come from. And then I published it, and the Star Trek part, because I was getting to that. The title of the book is Fully Functional. Um, but and I had a buddy of mine pick up a copy, and then he wrote to me a little later, and he says, "Well, I really like these, but some of this is a little a little saucy. I'm not sure I can share these with my wife. That's, it's up to you, man. But I would totally share those with a partner. That would be awesome. But eventually, he and I were talking. He goes, I was sort of exaggerating, but like, yeah, she thought they were really cool too. Oh, good, good, good. I don't need to know more details. But if it made you connect, if it helped you, then that's great. Um, so the latest one was called Fully Functional. Um, and I'm happy to send you, screenshots and stuff like this after. Um,
Cool.
I I also got into writing inspirational stuff. So I wrote an inspirational book for werewolves. And it didn't start out a book, right? It was like a couple of things. I remember seeing like these posters that we all had when we were kids, or we knew of someone who had. It was like everything I needed to know about life I learned in kindergarten, or I learned as a pilot and so forth. And I ran across a book by Richard Bach, and that book was sort of lessons from his book Illusions and some of his other stuff. But it was meant to be open at random. You like concentrate on your issue, and you open the book at random. And that appealed to me because of found in not just the cryptozoology, but all that like crazy magical stuff from the 70s. So the idea that you could have this book and open it at random, and perhaps your answer would be there. And I said that was always a terrific idea. Like, well, let's do that, but for werewolves. So I wrote a couple of little aphorisms, and it was meant for a door poster. Remember door posters, right? Long,
Yeah.
skinny posters, and you put them on the inside of your bedroom door. So like before you go out in the morning, like get psyched up for the day, gonna get ready for the day. Look at my poster. Treat other people the way you'd like to be treated yourself. Like, okay, okay, that's cool. And so you go out. So these were all werewolf things. So it'd be like, okay, be sure to keep your teeth clean because your life depends on them. Okay, that makes sense. Never transform out of anger. Everyone regrets it, including yourself. Like, okay, okay. And so I'm just like generating these things. And I got to a point when I realized, wow, I've got like again, I did the same thing. I thought, I got five, I got my 10, maybe a dozen. I had like 130. So I put them together in a book, just like the Richard Bach book, where you could open the book at random and do this. And of course, I wrote the whole story sort of around it. So it's like, hey, this is advice book for werewolves, by werewolves. Have a great time, learn what you can, feel free to concentrate on what you want. I showed this to my aunt, and she just laughed. And she's looking at it, and she's like, "Oh, this is a chicken soup for the werewolf soul. I love it." I'm like, "Oh my God, you're right."
Uh,
So that's that's out too. Uh, uh, that's called Tooth, Claw, and Heart. Um, and then the book series. So that's the series that I'm working on. That's all these sort of stories that are narrated by this fictional character who travels around. That's called the Terror Stories from the Territories. So that series, book one is probably going to publish in July. That's the plan.
okay.
And so there'll be a new book published every month until the series is done. Um, there's 18 books in the series, so I'm busy.
Yeah, yeah, you're very busy.
Um, but I've been really focused on that writing, and they're coming together nice. And the artwork, the cover art is coming in from Nick Gucker. He's the cover artist, and it's so beautiful. Um,
Cool.
every time I get another cover, I'm like, oh my God, Nick, this stuff is it's just more and more amazing as we go. And I'm really glad that he's working that project. So my designer has helped me come up with a design for the book on the outside, and I've been designing the inside. So it's lots of double page spreads and really sort of designed like a journal. And it's really cool. Each book has at least 10 stories in it. Um, some more, none less. So there's always 10 or more. Um, but I mean, 18 of anything. It doesn't matter what you're doing, right? Whether you're making sandwiches or books, 18 of anything is a ton of work. So I am super, super full time wise.
So let me ask you, like, where do you get so many inspirations to write as many stories as you write? I mean, there are some writers who might say, "Man, I get writer's block," but for you, it looks like creativity is just flowing; it's just coming out. Do you have like a maybe a routine, or Maybe any tips on how you can be so just so active in your writing?
Harlan Ellison used to joke that he subscribes to a service that sends him new ideas. And I kind of get a kick out of the joke. Um, but here's what I've learned, and I honestly believe that this is the thing. So all of this stuff I'm working on. There's also a piece to this too. There's a spreadsheet because of course it's a spreadsheet. There's a spreadsheet I maintain for every time I have a brainstorm or an idea. So I think that the way our brains work, right? We're always trying to connect. We want to connect to stories, but sometimes that connection, making that story is there's a mechanical aspect to it, and you have to go through the mechanical aspect to it. You turn the crank, you make the thing happen, you have to write the story, you have to make the movie, you have to edit it, and so forth. You have to do the thing in order for that thing to be done. Um, One of my screenwriting instructors, one of my favorite screenwriting instructors, Cynthia, um, illuminated it this way, that writing, and she used writing, but I think creativity in general has sort of three stages to it. And the first is that sort of visionary stage where you're like, your brain just explodes, like, wow, wow, what if I explored this? And and then the second one was sort of the Brahma version. And that's the part that's like, okay, I have this idea, this thing, it's flashed into my head. And now I have to hook myself into the traces and just drag that idea across. If it's a book, I have to write that manuscript all out. I have to write that book out. If it's a film, I have to go, there's a lot more pieces. I have to get, all the stuff together and get the film made, get the film edited and get it out. If it's a single poem, of course, a lot of stuff is easy, but you have to drag that. And sometimes it feels hard. That's why I say drag. But the Brahma is the bull who's pulling your project, doing the necessary mechanical work to get that project done. And then there's the Shiva portion, the third portion of the creativity. And that Shiva portion is like, I've completed this project and I'm going to wipe my space clear. The project is done. So whether if I have notes on the wall, if I've made myself a crazy wall with post-it notes and thread, whatever, take all that down. And we all have done stuff like that where we've kind of finally hit that Shiva moment in our project when we're done, we're clear. Wipe the scales, wipe take the whiteboard and erase it, take the stuff off the fridge, take the stuff off the wall, delete the old files. Delete the files, but you archive the files. You you upgrade all of your system and everything. Like, I am ready and I am open for the new Vishnu, the new burst of creativity. And I am answering your question. I promise. I promise. Um, but that model is important because I was guessing that model, like, okay, so Cynthia suggested that model, and I'm like, well, so that might be cool. And the more I thought about it, the more that model fit. Like most of us will do that. We'll come up with an idea, and then with that energy, there's three different kinds of energy. Those are the three different kinds of energy you're bringing into your project. That burst, that sudden flare, right, of brilliance, and maybe brilliance, but sometimes not. But that's okay. It doesn't matter. You accept yourself. Then the energy of get it across the line, right? Just drag that right across the line. And I say drag. It's just work. It's a different kind of energy you have to bring in. You have to bring in that, like, I'm just going to clock in and I'm going to do what I need to do to get it across the line. And that's that. It's not bad. And I don't want to make it sound bad. And then that, if you want to call it closure, or the energy that says, stop. You are no longer engaged in this project for whatever way, shape, or form. Let it go. Open yourself to the next thing. So that sort of destructive, but destructive in a good way, energy. So those are those three kinds of energy you've got to cultivate and you've got to respect and honor. And I think a lot of people get that Vishnu stuff and they'll get that burst and they'll use that burst to start moving, but they don't have that Brahma kind of energy switch over come in. And so they get like, oh, yeah, I've written a couple of short stories because you can Vishnu your way through some short stories. But when it comes to a novel, it's a little more work. But I got to that point and I got like, chapter 3, and I kind of fell apart and I didn't feel like I could finish it and I didn't know where I was going. Or like with screenwriters, It's often like, I got to the first act, I got 30 pages in or so, but I'm not sure where to take it from now. And it is so consistent in so many other projects. You get so far in, you can only go so far on that initial creative burst of energy. So you have to be able to switch over and focus on that energy that moves it. That's the current. That's the Brahma energy that moves that through. All right. So from my experience, not necessarily everybody's, but this was what worked for me. From my experience, I recognize that that Vishnu energy is super strong. I mean, it's bright. It's so bright. You can be doing whatever you're doing, and suddenly, like, wow! And it can be anything. It can be triggered by a commercial on TV. It can be triggered by seeing a leaf falling from the tree. Think of all the one single lines that feel like you hear it, and suddenly your brain starts unspiraling. Wow! What if it means this, or what if it means that? Walking in the woods and you see a little pile of stones in a certain way on the ground, and you create a whole story in your mind about where that little pile of stones came from, who put it there, why did they put it there, why are there feathers, why are there sticks, what was going on? Was this a relationship thing? Is this a spell thing? Is this magic stuff? What's going on? Do we have a whole bunch of druids? And your brain is like just spinning up like crazy. That's the Vishnu energy. If you let it, it will overwhelm the Brahma energy, because the Brahma energy feels, it's kind of mechanical and sometimes it can feel boring. The Vishnu energy is exciting, and it's vigorous because it's new. Whatever that story is, that's new, and it's so attractive, and it's so seductive. You have to do something with that. Um, because what if you keep letting that take over, you're not going to get far in your work, in your projects. And I even want to use the word work lightly. You're not going to be able to finish the creative thing you want to finish, because you're constantly being seduced by the new Vishnu energy thing. And so you end
Mm.
up with, well, I got 37 projects, I got 20 pages in, and I just couldn't finish. Like, yes, and I know why. So once I understood what at least I thought the problem was, I naturally started thinking, how can I solve this problem? Because my professional training is in business analysts. And so it's like, okay, we've identified the problem. What's the solution? What's the solution that gives us what we need to go?
Mm.
And it was setting up a spreadsheet, because, of course. But so I hypothesized that whenever I got like this sort of Vishnu burst, there's a conflict. And here's where I think a lot of people stumble, right? So they're pulling a project along. They got the Brahma energy going on. They're doom, 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 doom. And then this Vishnu burst comes through, and like, wow, wow, this is great. And at that moment, they have a choice. And no choice is good. This is where I think people screw up. So I'm going to illustrate that part. They have to choose, or they feel like they have to choose between, either I deny this Vishnu, this burst of energy, this amazing uh, creative burst, or I deny the completion of this project. No good solutions. They're denying some aspect of themselves, of their own creativity. They're denying themselves the joy of finishing a project, getting it across that finish line, and wiping their desk clear for the next project. They're denying this creative burst. No good choices, and they hurt themselves. They, psychically, if you want, or emotionally, they restrict and restrict and restrict, and they like, no, I can't look at that, can't look at that, can't look at that. I can only look at this, or I can't look at this, I can't look at this. I keep being burst by that, and you get these weird conflicts that should never be conflicts. Um, And so you get people like, oh my God, my head's exploding with ideas all the time. But what have you finished? Oh yeah, I suck. Or you get people like, yep, I've written a couple of books, but I don't know what I'm going to write about. And in each case, they have, I think, rejected one or both, or one of those or the other, so hard that it's harder for it to come back.
Mm.
I recognize this tendency in myself. So what I did was I made a spreadsheet, and that spreadsheet is just super easy. It's just like, what's the idea, and write some clarification on it. Give me the title or whatever. I'm telling my brain, it's like, I don't care. I just don't want to forget it. So if I'm in the middle of pulling something along to get it over the finish line, and I get a burst. I sort of tell that one project I'm working, like, hold on for just a minute. And then I open myself to, what is this burst telling me? Because you never know what you're going to be inspired by. It could be something you're working on too. So I pop open that spreadsheet and I start writing in, I just free form whatever's coming in. Like, okay, yeah, this is going to be a story about a guy who can turn people into trees and back and forth. And when he does and turns them back into people, they tell him things that he never understood about the world and the earth. And so now he's got to make a decision about whether he keeps doing it. Should he do it to everybody? What should he do? And I'm just improvising as I go. So then I write that down, and then I sort of ask myself, okay. So hey, Edward, who's here now, uh, Edward, who's looking at this Vishnu burst of energy, I want to ask you, have I written enough down that you feel comfortable letting that go while I continue moving this other project across the line? And if I feel like, no, I'm missing a part, because that's where we get screwed up. We like, oh no, if I don't write it down, I'll miss it. So no, we say, if I don't make that project, that Vishnu new thing that come up, I'll forget it. Oh my God, I'll forget it. There's so many people like, I had these brilliant ideas and I totally forgot them. Like, no, I want to respect you. So I've written a paragraph here. Am I missing anything? Do you, and of course I'm talking to myself, do you feel comfortable enough with what I've written that you can let it go until I get to it later? I need a yes. But if it's no, I need to know that, because I'm going to change it as needed. I'm not going to write the whole thing. Future Edward will handle that. But I want you to get to the part where you're comfortable with this paragraph I've written. And when I tell myself, like, yep, I feel that way, then I can go, great. That's on the spreadsheet. Now let's get back to pulling this thing across the finish line. And so then I continue pulling this thing across the finish line. It's not perfect, but I would say it's 80% better than anything I've ever done. And I stumbled on it. And that whole, like, that feedback thing, checking with myself, like, are you confident enough with what I've written so that you can let this go and keep pulling this thing across? So instead of this conflict of Vishnu versus Brahma energy, I've embraced them both.
Mhm.
I like, and that checking in with myself, you have to be open about yourself and truthful with yourself, and that's always a real struggle sometimes. But like, I mean, are we good? Are we good? Are we still all in agreement that we're going to carry this one across? But we've respected that too. Like, yeah, okay, good. Now we're all focused on what we were doing, pulling this across the line, and we're all in agreement that's handled. So that spreadsheet has over 1,000 rows, Ryan, and I'm okay with that. So I'm sure, not unlike me, you have a pile of books to be read. And there may come a point in time when you look at that pile like, I am never going to read all those books. I have a pile of to be written. And that's okay. Because and I know looking at those, for each one of those, there was a moment in my life when I asked myself, have I sufficiently conveyed this idea that you feel like you can trust me and leave it in the spreadsheet and keep doing that? And I told myself, yes, let's keep doing that. And that's how I can get a project done and not lose that energy and the rollout from that, the result. And I didn't expect this, but this is the answer to your question. The result of this is that I have never, since doing that, denigrated or punched any part of my creative process. I've given each one a chance to express itself and then sit there and wait until I get back to you and then continue with this one. I'm respecting you. Now we're back here. We took a moment. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. We took a moment to handle that. Now we're back here. Keep on driving. I give that respect to both of those pieces. I'm not fighting myself. I'm not denigrating myself. I'm not saying, oh, I hate this or I hate that about myself. Like, I hate working a project when I get a new thing, or I hate getting a new thing when I'm working on a project. I don't hate any of that stuff, because that's not why I'm here. I'm here to connect with other people. And that includes aspects of myself. Part of myself that spotted a thing, spotted a tree with a single leaf in the middle of January. And like, what is that leaf story? That part, generates a sudden flash, that part's respected. And because I'm respecting it, I'm not fighting it, I'm not hurting it, I'm not feeling threatened by it, it keeps working more and more. It's a wolf that I feed, to borrow that other illusion. Um, do you feed the creative wolf that generates? Now I'm really stretching this metaphor. But I feed them both. Uh, I feed them all. And uh, that I never run out, because if I ever feel like, oh gosh, I don't know what I'm going to do, I'm going to run out of ideas, like that's never going to happen. Because first, ideas are going to be constantly suggested by everything around me. The world is full of things that trigger story ideas and people who want to talk story ideas about. But more importantly, I'm never going to lose it, and I get it in the spreadsheet. Now that said, when I get to a place, if I ever feel like, "Oh, I'm not sure what I'm going to do next," look at this spreadsheet. There are 1,000 things on that spreadsheet. More, it's like 1,011, I think, the last time I looked. And some of them, most of them, let's be honest, are not that great. They're just, they were random weird junk that popped into my head because I'm out walking around and I look up and I see a wire cable and it's in the shape of a face, or I'm watching my two cats look at each other and they both like jump like that. Like, what just happened there? So there's going to be stuff in that spreadsheet that's junk. That's just, it was exciting and it was action packed at the time. It burst into my head and I wrote it down and I believed, like, yeah, I got it all. I captured the idea. Good. Keep on moving. But ultimately now, I've finished a project and I'm maybe looking for the next thing to do, the next thing I want to do. And I look and I'm like, oh, there's some of these are just sort of fragments. They're not really a story. They're not really a wholly built idea. But that is, or that is, or that is. And like, wait a minute, I really like that. And every time I read these, I get that energy back. That doesn't go away. It's been stored by getting myself to agree to by writing it to the point where I've agreed, I've captured the energy. That energy's still there. So I'll go back and I'll look through those things, and I'll get to one thing. It's almost always get to one thing like, oh my gosh, yes, yes, that's the one I want to do. Yes, and that energy is like it never went away. And I'm not working on anything right now. So boom, it just becomes like it suddenly starts unfolding. And I'm a little more mature, a little older. I've done other projects, and so I suddenly start unfolding even more things. So that idea is even better because I've given it a chance to sort of simmer a bit, and it's not lost its edge, it's not lost its fire. But now I can add more, I can tweak more. But as I'm going through, I might say like, hey, wait a minute, this particular project, this is really cool and exciting, but you know what? There's like a character here from this other project that wasn't a full project, but I really love this character and I want to bring her in here, and I want to bring that other character or that situation that was a little weird from there. It wasn't a full idea, but I kind of want to bring that person, that situation into the story too. And the thing just suddenly gets marvelously complicated.
But
And
I just love the flow of it because it's so easy for creators out there to have regret if they let an idea go and they didn't write it down, or they didn't really hold on to thinking like, is this worth looking into later? But I think this format of really asking oneself, is this, can I come back to this? And I think it's just excellent, and it's something that I hope people in the audience, maybe other filmmakers or writers, can even try doing that. I mean, it's a great advice.
if it helps, I'm happy for you. I mean, free of charge. Obviously, I'm not going to have any kind of rights to that, but this has helped me tremendously. And if it helps someone else, if it helps anyone else, that's that's just great. And I never run out of ideas because I can be working on a thing and I'm inspired by any number of things 4 or 5 times during a single project. And I just throw it in the spreadsheet. And it may come to fruition someday, or it may just be a part of something else or whatever, but it's all there. And each one of those things has a little Vishnu burst with it that I've taken and encapsulated. And I think that's when you talk about writer's block and you talk about what techniques or tricks can you use to break writer's block? And it's like, stop blocking yourself. But
Mm.
I didn't want to just say it that way because it sounds so smarmy. Um, because I had to explain, well, this is what I think we're doing when we're blocking ourselves. We're either fighting for this or fighting this. And it's that fight is messing with us. It bruises us, and it
Yes.
shouldn't need to. We're out here in this world and we're telling stories and we're connecting as best we can, and that is sort of our fundamental need as a person.
Now I wanted to, off of that, pivot now to your film that you made a few years ago, Flesh of My
Flesh of my
Flesh.
flesh. Yeah.
Um, I've recently seen it. Probably not everyone in the audience
Oh,
has seen it, but I would like to hear, like, where did this idea for this movie, where did it come from?
oh my gosh. It was two intersecting, multiple intersecting. Like everything I'm doing now, everything's intersecting. But that's okay. Um, so first of all, thank you for watching Flesh on My Flesh. That's very kind of you. Um, I hope you watched all the way to the end, up to our stunning final scene.
Oh yeah.
Um, and that's still to me is one of the moments where like, yes, that's what I kind of wanted to get to. Um, but so the budget for that film was about $11,000, and it's all on the screen. But we did our best, and we're always like, always hoping, always hoping. But so I was having this idea. I was thinking about zombies, and I'm not too fond of that whole of sort of. There's an aspect to zombies that I don't like, and that aspect is that sense of it can be someone you care about, someone you love, but you're going to have to shoot them, and not fond of that. I mean, obviously, no one should be fond of that. But I think that's where zombies, which are a relatively new monster, um, I think that's weirdly enough sort of what appeals uh, to people about zombies because vampires are different, ghosts are different. You handle all the different monsters in different ways. Zombies was like something weird. I'm not too fond of this. So I started thinking, just like to spread your brain around, scatter about. And I had been reading about the Chinchorro Indians in northern Chile. And long before there were pyramids and mummies in Egypt, these guys were mummifying their dead. It was a different process, but they wouldn't just mummify them, right? They would, it was really graphic here. They would scoop them all out, and then they would build structures like sort of tall A-frames, and then put those back in the body. They build them out of like rushes and stuff because they were they weren't really tool users; they were fishermen. Um, but they would bind up rushes and then build these structures, and then they would um, cover the body with manganese paste and colorful layers of clay and paste, and paint them and decorate them. And it turns out quite often they would be out in the open because we can tell. We look at them and they've been painted, and so you can look, right. Archaeologists can look at this. Yes, they were painted with a layer of paint, and that paint faded from sun, and they were repainted with another layer. Like, okay, so you weren't burying your dead, you were keeping them, you were binding them, keeping them secure and out in the open. What happened that made you develop this? Because you are not a tool using group. um you're it's a fisherman tribe. And then they started suddenly kind of did this energy wise. It was a tremendous amount of energy for this society. And then over the years they kind of simplified and simplified until they were basically just kind of putting the bodies in a cave and covering with mud and walking away. All right, so my brain, like, something happened and you suddenly had to secure all your dead. Not just secure, but keep them out in the open and watch them. Like, what was that? And then another buddy of mine was telling me how some of the Pueblo cities down in the Southwest would, like, yeah, they were kind of doing their thing for a while, and all of a sudden, boom, they started building these big, heavy walled cities. naturally, same thing. Like, what happened? What suddenly happened that made you have to build these big walled cities? And I started thinking about that. And I really wanted to think of something that appealed in a kind of zombie way, but wasn't sort of the traditional, like the Haitian zombies or the
Mm.
Romero type zombies. And so I thought, well, what about this thing that, it's a organic biological thing. So there was a kind of a mechanical aspect to that. Like I kind of really feel like exploring this idea of um, zombies, but not zombies, like because everyone's doing zombie films, and that's cool, and that's great, good for you. And lots of comedy and lots of interesting stuff around that once you sort of buy into that. But I wanted to come up with something new. And so it was this idea that the human race, the species, every once in a while, there's a period of time when we don't know what causes it, what triggers it, but during that period of time, it might just be like 6 months or even a year. Anyone who is a human who has like certain, think of it as like a recessive gene of some sort, when they die, they don't die, they come back. And now they're a different creature. Like there's this whole cascade of, I mean, oh gosh, I'm kind of paraphrasing stuff that was from the movie too, I think. But there's this whole cascade of chemistry that happens when you die. That's a known thing. Like, well, yeah, but what if for some of us that cascade triggers you to become a different kind of a thing? Not necessarily undead zombie walking around, but like a specialized predator of some kind. But to anyone else looking, and be like, yeah, oh, Bob just kind of fell over dead. And then we were sitting there looking at him like, ah, sucks, he's dead. And then he came back up and he started attacking us and eating us. And like, well, that's going to start some rumors, let me tell you. And so I couldn't just come up with a zombie thing. I had to come up with like, what's a sort of a meta zombie story, something that explain all of the zombie stories. So that's where I came up with, started weaving that together and then connecting the characters in different ways. Um, and we did our best. We were kind of pushing through, and we got lucky in some places. And we were like, hey, we're going to film in this abandoned mental institution, but they're tearing it down, so we have to finish filming by a certain date. And we would finish filming like in one area, and we move on to the next one. Like, hey, maybe we need to go back and reshoot this thing. But no, that building is gone, buddy. They've wrecked it. And it was just nuts. But somehow we did end up doing one whole scene reshoot, rewrite and reshoot because it just wasn't working. Um, but we got all this stuff done, and this is an example of where I allowed uncertainty to mess with me. So we basically had everything in the can, or if you want, in the um, cartridge, because we filmed it all on mini DV. Um, and then I wasn't having necessarily some doubts, but someone had was talking to me and had a friend who was a film editor, a couple of friends, and I was still feeling very strongly energized about it. And they're like, well, you're not going to edit it, right? Like I was thinking of doing it, but you don't know what you're doing. I mean, how like for some reason, I don't know why. I don't know why. I think that happens to all of us, Ryan. We hear some criticism at just that opportune, the negative version of opportune moment when we're particularly vulnerable to it, and it just boom, it just undermined me so much. Um, so it got stuck in post for a long time because I would kept trying to build it up, and then but no, and then I'd keep hearing these voices. These people were like, "But you're not going to edit it, right?" Like, oh my God. I really know what I want. I really do. And I had one friend who was an editor, and they worked on a scene for a while, and then after a day of that, they contacted me and said, like, I can't do anything with this. This is garbage. Like, so this is dragging me down too. Like, wait a minute, wait a minute. There's the pieces are there. The pieces are there, and yeah, we're low budget, and we had very little money, and we were doing our best. Our actors were doing a great job, and we created some amazing stuff for that.
Yeah.
Like, so you've seen it recently, right? So you think
Yeah.
about that bank of monitors on the wall. That wasn't a post-production effect. We, so for anyone not watching the movie, there's this area where they have all these monitors on the wall. I think there was 12. And so throughout the story, the characters are looking at something happening on the monitors that's supposed to be happening somewhere else
Yeah.
in this location, this setting. So we knew this going up front. Um, and my cinematographer was very, very good about this. He's like, we're going to have to film all that stuff in advance. Oh, okay, yeah, we're readjusting, shooting, and so forth. Um, Everything you see is a live image they're interacting with. Behind that wall, there are 12 DVD players and 12 remote controls, and there's one or two people who are working the remote controls, and they know exactly what scene we're filming and what so forth. Our actors are timing everything up so that they look, there's the guy. See him walking through that tunnel, and there's the guy. Because we filmed that like 3 weeks earlier. And we built all these DVDs signed by which camera or which security camera they're going into and which scene and sort of queue it all up. And the menus are all there. And I built these DVDs. So we had a stack of DVDs for this back wall, just working that back wall, man. Um, and but we did it. We did it. We even built a whole giant fake wall where eventually, it collapses and people come rushing in. All these things that you saw, it's like those are real things that we built. I reached out to. I know we can't all do this. I in the middle of the night when I thought like, hey, this is great. I'm so energetic. I'm reaching out. I'm writing out to helicopter manufacturer and saying, yeah, we're a low budget, we're student filmmakers. Always say you're students. We're
Yeah.
student filmmakers and we're working on a horror film, but we're really excited at the idea of maybe filming in a helicopter. You don't have to fly, you have to take it anywhere, but we would just be sitting in it, filming in it and coming back. There's no messiness in it at all. It's just this. We could probably be in and out in a day. Um, at 2 in the morning, you're bulletproof. Like, oh, send that off. It's no big deal. I get a call the next day from like their PR group. And they're like, oh yeah, yeah. So we wanted to reach out to you. Like, we're totally game. Why don't you come down and visit? We'll check out the different birds and see what you think. You're gonna let me do this? And they did. They let us come out and like they didn't fly anything, and that's totally cool. We agreed on that. Like, I'm gonna fly anything because that's like really expensive. But they basically rolled the helicopters out. So we had two different helicopters in that movie. They were real helicopters. Um, and then there's a couple scenes in the beginning that was a model, but anytime you looked inside, like in the beginning, that's a Sikorsky S-61. They said we could do that. And it's like, oh, well, we had this other helicopter in the end, but we don't want to keep using the same one. We use this little tiny one. It's like, oh, yeah, we'll bring out one of the llamas and you can look at that. And it's this little two-seater helicopter. And we're, put the camera up and just kind of, move the camera around like this while we're filming our characters in the helicopter doing this stuff and flying around. And how did we get this? I have no idea, but they said, sure, sounds great. Just like, how do we get to film at this mental institution out of Wilsonville, Oregon? The mental institution was called Damish. And I think one scene from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest was filmed there.
Okay.
But it was a former mental institution, and they had decommissioned it years ago, and they were wrecking it, tearing it down to make way for apartments or condos or whatever. They never moved the bodies. They only moved the stones, by the way. Um, but they let us film there, and they were like, "We don't care," So I think our one guy ended up bringing them like a couple 6 packs of beer every few days, and they were like, "Yeah, you guys film whatever you want." And we brought in generators because there's no electricity, there's nothing there. So we brought in generators and like hundreds of feet of extension cord, and we're powering everything up, um, and it was like, I think for a project like that to work, you need to have at least one person who sincerely, honestly believes it can be done and has just enough background to maybe be able to say, and this is how I think we can do it. And I was super lucky in that there was myself, there was my first AD, Leopoldo Marino, there was my producer, Travis Huntington, and there was our cinematographer, Ryan K. Johnson. The four of us met several times beforehand and going over like, how will we do this effect? How are we going to do that effect? What are you thinking? How are we going to move this forward? And we had done enough small budget projects before that we brought every single thing we could think of and how to do this effect and how to do that effect. And honestly, like the one effect that I had no idea how we were going to pull this off was Fred.
Mm.
And the whole Fred thing was like, guys, I know I'm fairly confident with most of this stuff. I have no idea how we're going to do Fred. And I was like, this is to encourage people to watch the movie. And then my cinematographer, Ryan, said, oh gosh, Edward, that's the easiest effect of all. Like, what? Um, but he's like, yeah. That Fred, that's an old magician's trick. Oh, absolutely. I know how to do that. And he had to mock it up before I understood it because I had no experience. I'm like, what do you mean a magician's trick, mirror's trick? What? So he mocks it up. Now, in Herbert's lab, where Fred was, I'm telling you all this stuff because I know you've just watched it, right? That's where Fred's big reveal was. So we would set the camera up, set the effects work up and the camera and everything else, and then set a monitor nearby. And the monitor sees what the camera's seeing. And when you look at something like a set, you see everything, you see the stuff around, you see the light rig and everything like that. But when you look at the monitor, you only see what the camera's seeing. And you could always tell, like the and that's when I was totally convinced. Because even then, I'm looking at it from this outside perspective, like I'm not sure how that's going to work. And Ryan got into the habit, and it's a legitimate habit of saying, Edward, go look at the monitor. Look at the monitor. Okay, we'll look at the monitor. So we'd had the monitor set up, and we're getting the actors getting ready, but everything's set up. And our actor who was playing Fred was kind of crouched in his position and kind of getting, we had some stand-ins too, because we had puppetry in that scene. And that was puppeted. So that, I mean, you figured that was probably puppeted. I hope I got most of the strings out. But like the spine, right? It's all puppeted. And you could tell when someone came in that they had similar, most of the time had similar doubts to me until they saw the monitor. And it always went like this. Someone would come in like, wow, okay, I see what, yeah, it looks kind of cool. Yeah, all right. But holy cow! And that was when they saw the monitor. The monitor, a camera, is one dimensional. It's like it's monocular. It doesn't see depth. It doesn't understand. You make that depth of field wide enough, you can get away with anything. I mean, we saw that in Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, right? They use depth of field tricks, among many other things. I'm not trying to compare. So we're like, yeah, we can do this. And I had to be shown how this works. And a couple other times, Ryan has shown me like, okay, we're going to do this as another trick. Like, I don't know how that trick works. And he goes, no problem, Edward, I'll show you. And so he would get like a couple of Star Wars figures and set up his camera and do this and do this. And then I bring in some After Effects work. And then that's what it looks like. And like, oh, I get it. Okay, let's film that. But it was having all four of us, myself, Leopoldo, Travis, and Ryan, all on board, all understanding what we're going to do. And that faith, that kind of energy where we confer once in a while, be like, hold on a second, let's talk about this. And then four of us would come together, like, we do this, and I'm like, okay, that'll work. Okay. And we go back out. I think having the rest of our crew and our cast see that that's what we had going on, that we had that connection. We were all aligned in one direction, and that we were very mutually respectful of each other too. Like there was things I didn't know, there were things other people didn't know, and between the four of us, we were able to create solutions. And I think that's low budget filmmaking. It's all about that, creating a solution for something like, we can't actually make a real werewolf. How are we going to do this? But I think with our cast and crew, seeing that we were calm and relaxed mostly, and putting this stuff together worked out. And they were like, I can buy into this. I can ride this ride because they're going to pull this thing across the finish line. And we did. We got it all filmed. I think we only missed one shooting day, which we made up. But it was because of weather. And we had like the worst ice storm that had hit Portland in more than like a decade. And we were about to film a really big scene with a ton of zombies and extras. We had bought so much food, and we had found a warehouse that we were going to film in. And the guy was like, "Yeah, it's cool. You can film in my warehouse." And it's like this whole giant zombie lair scene, and it was going to be like a big old fight scene and all kinds of stuff. And then this ice storm hits, and it was just brutal. I mean, like three-quarters of an inch ice all over everything, everything. And we ended up with something like a fifth as many zombies show up because, and even the guy that owned the venue, we show up and we're like, okay, is he? We were going to be here at 10, right? Right? You know, well, some of us are going to be here at 8 to set up, but and finally we get the guy on the phone. And he goes, "What are you guys doing there? Are you? Have you looked at the weather?" Like, yeah, we looked at the weather. We are filming today. Um, but there were a number of instances where there were car crashes on the way. Nothing
Mhm.
bad. No one got hurt. Um, our makeup person got stuck. So we were like, okay, we're advising people on trains, like take this train. We have a public transit train. And the trains were running fine. Um, and then I went out to rescue someone and pull them in, trying to get all of our main team together, and then people were like showing up eventually. We had so much food. Oh God, we had so much food. Um, but then I got into a wreck. I mean, I slid across because it's ice. It's just ice. It was like icy rain, and it was just nuts. And so wrecked my car, but eventually got back. If you get a chance and you got the DVD, I don't know if you got the DVD or if you watched it in streaming. There's a behind the scenes video of this movie, and it was like Sean Strauss. He was our editor, and he built this behind the scenes thing, and it's like an hour and a half long by itself, and it's nutso because he got so much great stuff. Like, and there's this moment where I came back after wrecking my car back to this warehouse finally, and my first AD, so Travis and Ryan are just like, we're focusing on our work right now. Where Ryan's setting up the shots, figuring out how this is going to work. Travis is sort of managing, making sure that all the pieces come together. And Leopoldo meets me at the door. And Sean caught this on video. And we're right up to each other's face, just like right in each other's face. And I don't remember exactly what it was said, but it was something like Leopoldo was like, I think we should cancel this shoot. It's like, I don't think we should cancel this shoot. I think this is bad, Edward. I yes, it's bad, but I don't think we should cancel the shoot. It was just like where, and Sean is like, how the hell did you get this shot? And he's got this shot of us like right in each other's faces. And we both have that kind of like resting jerk face when we're talking really serious stuff. We look really angry. And we do, we look angry. And we were a little annoyed at each other, but not sorry, we weren't annoyed at each other. We were really stressed. But we were still like, let's talk. But we were right in each other's face, and Sean got that shot. That's unbelievable. Um, but later, a couple people told me like, yeah, we saw you and Leopoldo talking, and we just stopped and watched because we thought you were going to start punching each other. It's like, no, we weren't going to punch each other. You looked really mad. We were really stressed. But we got the shots, and we had to modify some things. Um, because we didn't have like this giant crowd that we were hoping for. So we ended up with kind of like grabbing little shots here and there. And you might remember there's a scene where there was a character who was sort of captured by the zombies and being rolled along, and he keeps looking back and forth in different directions, and he sees
Yeah.
like, oh my God, this horrible thing's happening. Oh my God, that horrible thing's happening, and so forth. And Ryan came up with that. We were trying to figure out like how are we going to adapt to this. And he's like, well, what do you think if we did the story, we filmed it a slightly different way instead of this big reveal of a big giant crowd, we reveal all these little bits and pieces and we bring it all in on audio.
Mhm.
And so we filmed it that way, and that's why we filmed that. Um, so that was the only time we lost because there was another storm that was even worse. That was really, really bad, and so we lost a day of filming. But other than losing that one day, which we did make up, we brought that film in the amount of time we expected to bring it in. There was a few nights that went late, and that's always regrettable. And I approach these things much differently now than I did. Um, because now you just got to be open with your crew. Like, hey, we're stumbling on something, we don't know why, but we're looking at it maybe going running really late. Um, and just checking with everybody, like we'll take a break, have a little dinner, we're gonna relax, but we kind of get ourselves poised for maybe running late or possibly going another day. Um, but we got everything done, and then um, I temporarily misplaced my editing mojo, and so struggled a bit with that. But we got through. We got through. We finished it. When by the time we'd finished, even the version of Adobe Premiere that we were using to edit with was like 10 years old already. Just want to upgrade my system. I'm running Windows 95. I'm running this old cranky version of Premiere. I don't want to change anything until this movie is done. But we did it, and we got it, and we got it done, we got it out, and it was such a relief to sort of do the Shiva part. Like, I am done. I am clearing my desk, clearing everything. And what's next?
To wrap it up, I have just two simple last questions for you. Are you
I
ready?
promise to keep them short.
Okay. One of the questions I have for you is, are there any other creative people out there who you think or suggest that we should keep an eye on?
Oh, you mean like yeah, yes, yes. So I'll tell you this: go to film festivals. If you're horror, go to find a horror film festival and watch those movies. Every one of those people, and many horror film festivals have the people show up, the directors. Um, I've met some, and of course, I'm blanking on most of their names. One of the ones I remember just today was Taylor Garcia. Taylor Garcia wrote a movie that was originally called Gnaw, and it's now called Apartment 212. But I watched that like, oh my God, this guy's amazing. I love his energy. Um, then there's like I go to a number of horror film festivals. I go to another film festival called the Lovecraft Film Festival, HP
Okay.
Lovecraft Film Festival,
HP
and it's
Lovecraft.
all new films, right? Most almost all of these are new films that came out within the past year or not even out yet. They're new filmmakers. Go to film festivals, watch the films. I just watched a movie a little while ago, also loved it, called Invisible Raptor, and it is about an invisible raptor. And I don't want to spoil it for you, but it's great fun. And I met the filmmakers there, and I cannot remember their names, but they were super awesome. Um, there's another horror film I recently watched called Complex Forms. Wow, wow, wow! I think it was Italian, and it was just amazing. That's where you're going to see it. So as far as individuals, I would say go to film festivals, meet filmmakers. They want to meet you. Just let them know, like, hey, I liked your movie. Can I ask you a question about it? They want to answer those questions. So rather than kind of call out one or a couple of different ones, I would say meet as many as you can. They all are out there trying to connect. This is how they're trying to connect. This is what they want to do. They want to connect
And my last question for you is, why is creativity important for you?
because that is how I connect. That's how I mean, I connect to people, sorry, in a lot of different ways. Um, like I was joking earlier, but like if you were here, it'd be like, come on over, let's have some pizza and watch a movie. I love connecting. I feel like that is the reason I exist in this universe, is to connect with other people. And I think that's the reason we exist. All of us, whether we're people or animals or anything, we existence is to connect. And to me, creating is a way to connect with a lot of people. I would still, if there was no way to make a movie, I would still write. If there was no way to write, I would still tell stories. I would find ways to connect, and that's how I connect. Doing lots of what if. It wasn't until I learned that you could write fiction, which is a weird thing to think about it now, but of course you have to learn that, that I realized, oh, fiction is how we explore things that's not real. That's not canon. I'm not doing historical documents. I'm exploring a what if. And I'm always going to want to do that. Creativity and writing and creating and producing a film or any of that stuff, that is just one of the ways in which I can connect with other people. If at all possible, I will always, always, always try to connect with other people because I love connecting.
Well, thank you so much, Edward, for sharing your creative growth, your evolution over time, your love for horror and sci-fi and Star Trek. I've really enjoyed this conversation. And for those in the audience who are interested in finding out more about Edward, where can they go?
They can go to hellbendermedia.com. Um, Thank you for letting me do that, Ryan. But yes, they can go to hellbendermedia.com, and I got it all there. And if you want to like burrow further in, there's a menu option at the top that says under the hood. No, behind the scenes. And once you hit behind the scenes, and it's like, welcome to the behind the scenes. Here's all the different things. Here's some books, and here's some movies, and here's this, and here's that, and it's always adding to that. I have a whole blog on there where I talk about filmmaking tips and things that we're doing next. And the filmmaking tips is all free. And there's like, I don't know, like there's like 170 tips on there right now. And I'm adding more and more. Of course, just like anyone else, I have a list of tips I haven't put on there yet, but I think like 100 tips or no, 800 tips or so I haven't put on there yet. So
And yeah, you also have a YouTube channel, correct?
I do. And I probably should keep it up to date. I
So
have not touched it in a while, but yes, yeah. And that's all linkable from hellbendermedia.com.
okay, perfect. So for those in the audience, I'll be leaving the links below in the show notes so you can go there and check out all the work by Edward Martin III. And again, Edward, thank you. And to those in the audience, don't forget to like, subscribe, and please share so that other people may encounter and explore the awesome work of our great guest, Edward Martin III. Again, Edward, thank you so much for being guest here on Creativity Worth Expressing.
Ryan, thank you so much for having me. I hope you have a fantastic time.